Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Julian Mosine McQueen from the Million Person Project.
And I'm Heather Box.
This is the Stories Are Power video series. Recently, Heather had the opportunity to interview 21 incredible leaders from all walks of life, from all around the world, about their story. How did they use it? What's the power? And how do they harness it for their work? With that, everybody watching that series, and a bunch of folks came back to us with a number of questions. And so with this video series, we want to address some of the most common questions that we got from people that watched this series. Questions like, what if I feel like I don't have a story?
Yeah, or what if I feel disconnected to my audience when I'm sharing my story? Or if I feel like I'm still kind of in my story and it feels too hard to share it? Those were the most common questions that we got.
So this is video number 1, and we're going to address that first one. What if I feel like I don't have a story? So Heather, why do you think that's a question that we get so often in our work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we live in this culture that's obsessed with the hero's journey. That's like obsessed with the giant turning point where everything changes and the hero has to overcome. Those are the kinds of stories that we see all throughout our culture. But most of our experiences are more nuanced than that. And it's about, this small turning point, this person who came into your life and influenced you in this way. And it's really that journey that is most people's personal story.
Right. So with that, you use your story in our work, obviously, all the time. And by most measures, your life journey has been fairly mellow by a lot of counts, right? So maybe that's something you've dealt with, and I'm wondering, how have you come to understand the power of your story?
Yeah, I think, coming to understand my own story and to really embody it and own it has been a big process for me, because it isn't like, like I said, this hero's journey. And when you don't have one of those stories, it can be tempting to discount your experience and to be like, those people's stories are more important. And to me, that is something that I feel like if I could eliminate one thing in the world, it would be that. It would be other people telling other people's stories for them, especially when they're discounting their own experience and being like, this experience is more important. So I really believe that finding your own story and your own path is so important. And for me, it was like, it's about honoring my experience. So, and really realizing what a massive influence, for example, Grandpa Bill has had on me, and how I have embodied some of the values that I've learned from him. It's been about identifying that a lot of my journey has been about internal shifts inside of me. So growing up in Sebastopol, which is a small town in Northern California, my parents and my sister, they were really interested in making me feel safe and taking really good care of me. And I was the baby. And so I was in this little safety bubble, and I liked it in there. And when I started to see that the world wasn't that safe for everybody, that we could end up living on the streets, or that we could be run over by a bus, or, all of these wars, it started to cause serious anxiety for me. And so a lot of my story is about those internal shifts and learning how to love being alive when all of this other stuff is going on in the world. And so, so it's about taking my story seriously, about honoring the internal shifts, about really exploring where my values come from. That's been my process.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, so the purpose of this series is to help give our audience here some game. So you work with dozens of people. We've worked with thousands of people over the last few years. How do you, in your coaching, help people break through to recognize the power of their story, even if it doesn't have that hero's journey element?
Yeah, so this is the most important thing, is people come to me and they say, I don't really have a story. I don't really have a message. And then you ask them just a couple questions, like, how come you parent the way that you parent? Or how come you're an employee or a boss the way that you are? Or what are the things that you love to do the most in the world? And you start to see that everyone really has a strong set of values. And it's about exploring, where did those values come from? And what were the life experiences that shaped them? Not just like, I have these values because my parents have these values. It's about how did you choose to embody them? And so what we would love to leave you guys with is 2 things that you can do right now to start thinking about your story. So the first is to think about 3 people in your life that have really impacted you. It can be close relationships, it can be strangers, it can be people you've had positive relationships with, negative, it doesn't matter. 3 people who have impacted you, and how did interacting with them change the way that you see the world? So that's the first piece.
Another great question you can ask yourself is think of turning points in your life. What are 2 or perhaps 3 turning points that have taken place on your journey that have affected you? How did they affect you? And most importantly, how did your understanding of the world around you change based on those turning points? So those are a couple ways that you can start to think about your story right now. If you're interested in digging deeper and really exploring this, that's what we're here for. We'd love to talk to you more. So hit us up and let's talk about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I mean, I really, really live for this work, and I really believe that honoring your story and taking seriously the journey that you're on, this human experience, is really, really critical, and that there's something very flippant and nonchalant about saying, I don't really have a story. No, it's about honing in and taking the time to recognize what is precious to you and being willing to share that with the world.
All right, and that's what we're here for. So thank you so much. We'll be back.